Reading from the Holy Gospel according to St. Mark.
Glory to you, Lord.
Jesus and his disciples reached the country of the Gerasenes on the other side of the lake, and no sooner had he left the boat than a man with an unclean spirit came out from the tombs towards him. The man lived in the tombs, and no one could secure him anymore, even with a chain, because he had often been secured with fetters and chains, but had snapped the chains and broken the fetters, and no one had the strength to control him. All night and all day, among the tombs and in the mountains, he would howl and gash himself with the stones. Catching sight of Jesus from a distance, he ran up and fell at his feet and shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? Sir, by God, you will not torture me." For Jesus had been saying to him, "Come out of the man, unclean spirit." "What is your name?" Jesus asked. "My name is Legion," he answered, "for there are many of us." And he begged him earnestly not to send them out of the district. Now there was there on the mountainside a great herd of pigs feeding, and the unclean spirits begged him, "Send us to the pigs, let us go into them." So he gave them leave. With that, the unclean spirits came out and went into the pigs, and the herd of about 2,000 pigs charged down the cliff into the lake, and there they were drowned. The swineherds ran off and told their story in the town and in the country round about. And the people came to see what had really happened. They came to Jesus and saw the demoniac sitting there, close and is in his full senses, the very man who had the legion in him before, and they were afraid. And those who had witnessed it reported what had happened to the demoniac and what had become of the pigs. Then they began to implore Jesus to leave the neighborhood, and he was he was getting into the boat, and the man who had been possessed begged to be allowed to stay with him. Jesus would not let him, but said to him, "Go home to your people and tell them all that the Lord in his mercy has done for you." So the man went off and proceeded to spread throughout the Decapolis all that Jesus had done for him, and everyone was amazed. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
From the beginning, the question that we could ask ourselves is, what would Jesus go to this region to do as a Jew? Because definitely this countryside and this territory belongs to the pagans, and you would know that because they were keeping heads of pigs, and pigs was an animal which was considered unclean for the Jews. So why would Jesus go to that region? We know the disciples, I'm sure they would have warned him, no, don't go to this place because this is a pagan country. And once you go there, then you become also unclean. You remember when the disciples found Jesus in John's Gospel with the Samaritan woman talking, they were asking in their hearts, what is he talking with this woman? This is a Samaritan. You're not supposed to interact with a pagan or with a Samaritan. But there is Jesus now going to the region which is considered a pagan country, considered unclean. And within this pagan country, there is somebody there who is even more unclean because he's possessed by a legion. So many demons have possessed him. And he dares to go into that country. What is really the meaning of this is to tell us about the mercy of God, the healing power of God that goes beyond the law. And the uncleanliness of this person would be considered that, the Jews would consider that if you go to this unclean country, then you become unclean. But no, that does not work for God. Our uncleanliness does not make God unclean. No, God makes our uncleanliness clean. He cleanses us from our uncleanliness. Our sinfulness do not make him dirty. Our sinfulness do not make him corrupt. Our sinfulness does not make him unclean. But no, he comes to cleanse us from our uncleanliness. And this is what Jesus does. And then he goes to fulfill the words of the prophet Isaiah when he says that you are precious in my eyes and I love you. Isaiah chapter 43 verse 4. You are precious in my eyes and I love you. And it goes forth to say that I would exchange you for many nations. I will exchange your life for many kingdoms. So Jesus goes into this country and he sees the life of this person. It's very precious to him. And he will give up even the heads of the pigs in exchange for the life of this person. And you see, the reaction is so different because there are people who also value their property more than human life. They say, no, Jesus, why do you do this? They even send him out of their area because Jesus has upset everything in that area. He has made the flock or the herds of pigs to drown into water. And this is the treasure of somebody. This is somebody's property. This is somebody's source of livelihood. But it tells us how much Jesus values our lives, even when we are sinful, even when we are unclean. Now, in the end, he uses this person as a source of proclamation. He sends him, he commissions him to be also a minister of the gospel because he himself has been sent out of the region. They say, we don't want you here because you have upset everything. But they forget to know that the person that we are unable to hold, Jesus has set free. Their eyes is on what Jesus has done with the heads of the pigs. Jesus has sent it into water. They have all drowned. And maybe somebody has lost his property, but it tells us so much about how much Jesus values us, even when we are sinful, even when we feel we are unworthy, even when we are isolated because of our sinfulness, even when the devil has kept us from the rest of the people, and we feel we are lost, we are forgotten. Jesus reaches out. God always reaches out to us. He always comes like the prodigal son, waiting for the son to return, always waiting and hoping that we are going to make that step towards God. And this is what the man does. The man who was possessed by a legion of demons, he sees Jesus and he goes to him. He goes to him and he submits to him. And of course, Jesus cleanses him from his uncleanliness, and he becomes a messenger of Jesus because he goes out and he begins to proclaim. Just like the Samaritan woman, after she had left Jesus, she went into the town and she said, come and see somebody who has told me everything about my life. Now this man also lives and he starts to proclaim and he says, come and see the man who has cleansed me from all my sins, who has delivered me from all the demons that had made it impossible for people to hold me. My dear brothers and sisters, let us remember that God is always reaching out to us. despite our failures, despite our unworthiness, despite our sinfulness, despite our weaknesses, God is always reaching out, stretching his hands to pull us out, just like stretching his hand to pull out Peter from the sea, which is swallowing him up. But we must be able to stretch our hands to be able to hold on to him, so that he can hold us out of the situation in which we find ourselves. We must do our possible best to do everything that we can to get out of the situations in which we find ourselves. And that is by stretching our hands to Jesus. A life of prayer, a life of the sacraments, trying to read the scriptures, trying to pray the rosary all the time, and keep faithful to all that Jesus wants us to do. And let us ask God for that grace, for the strength to be able to stretch out our hands, that Jesus may pull us out of the situations in which we find ourselves. Amen.